If you ever feel out of control around food, you're not alone, and you're in the right place to learn practical, no-nonsense information about why you binge and how to stop. Binge eating does not mean that something is wrong with you. It's a natural but primitive brain response that you can correct. If you're ready for change, sign up for the Brain Over Binge self-paced online course for less than $20 per month. And if you feel you need personalized support, we also offer one-on-one coaching and group coaching. To learn more, go to brainoverbinge.com/subscribe. And I hope you enjoy the show. Welcome to the Brain Over Binge podcast, where you learn a simple, brain-based approach to ending binge eating. I'm your host, Kathryn Hansen, and for those of you who are listening for the first time, I'm the author of Brain Over Binge and the Brain Over Binge Recovery Guide. I'm so glad you're here, and I know you're going to find today's episode helpful, especially if you're someone who frequently tells yourself that you'll start recovery tomorrow, or next week, or in the new year. With it being November, you may already be telling yourself that you'll quit binge eating in 2024. But Coach Julie and I are here to tell you that you don't have to wait, and that you can overcome your brain's natural tendency to want to delay recovery. You're definitely not alone in having this tendency, and in today's show, we'll help you understand it and find your own power to give yourself the gift of being binge-free right now. Hi, Julie. It's so good to have you back on the show.
Hi, Kathryn. It's so good to be here.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about a very, very important topic, especially as we wind up 2023. We're going to talk about the myth of I'll start tomorrow. And anyone who has struggled with binge eating, with any other destructive habit, has probably had thoughts that say, oh, I'll just do the destructive behavior now and I'll start over tomorrow. I know it was something I experienced. I know it was something you experienced. So, Julie, let's just get started talking about this myth.
Yeah, I think it's probably the most ubiquitous phrase I hear as a coach. It's the most ubiquitous phrase I used throughout 40 years. It was, I'll start tomorrow. I'll start Monday. I'll start on the 1st. I'll start on January 1st. I'll start on Rosh Hashanah. It was always I'll start at some future date that was better than the one that I was in right now. And I just think, like, everybody listening, like, how many times have you used that line?
Oh, for sure. I used it every upcoming birthday, every upcoming, just any big event in my life, any first of the month, first of the week, first of the year, like you talked about. And it's just so universal. And I think that's really the first step, is seeing that it's not just you. This is not a unique thing to your habit. This is everyone who struggles with a destructive habit. So really normalizing it for yourself can be a good first way to start to get control of this.
Yeah, it is a classic phrase in any habit. It happens in the drinking world, in the smoking world, in the shopping world, in the gambling world. It's just this, I'll start tomorrow. Let me get it out of my system, that whole thing.
And I definitely have some thoughts about where this comes from, and I would love to dive into that a little bit. So I think what happens is the urges come, and we talk about the urges a lot on this podcast, and you feel so compelled to act on this behavior. You feel so compelled to do this habit. And if you're binging, you feel so compelled toward large amounts of food. And because this urge is so uncomfortable, you need sort of a reason to give in. And this becomes your brain's reason. And the first time you have it, the thought that, oh, I'll start tomorrow, it seems to make sense. Okay, I'll just give in. I'll get rid of this urge. I need the relief. And then I'll start over. And the thought just keeps coming up and keeps coming up. It definitely becomes all part of the habit.
Yeah, and the irony of that very scenario that you're talking about. So you have desire for food, and then you use that permission-giving thought. I call those permission-giving thoughts, right? I'll start tomorrow. I'll get it out of my system, right? To then binge or overeat. And what actually has just happened is that you've ensured that the urge is going to come back bigger and stronger. Mm-hmm. So the fallacy in that thought right away of I'll start tomorrow is tomorrow's never going to come, because with every I'll start tomorrow, you've just reinforced a pathway in your brain that you don't want to be reinforcing. Plus, you've ensured that the urges are going to be bigger and stronger, and you're going to have the hell of the binge on the other side. So you're going to be less resourced to manage the lower brain when the thought arises again of I'll start tomorrow, or I've already blown it, or whatever comes up.
Yeah, for sure. There's this illusion that your future self, whether that's tomorrow, next week, next year, will be more capable of dealing with the urges. But like you said, the more you act on them, the stronger they get, the deeper the habit is ingrained. And then your future self is actually less resourced to deal with the urges.
Totally. I would love today to go over 4 reasons why this is such, I call it the myth of I'll start tomorrow. And because I really want to like break it down into these 4 ways that it's a myth. It's exactly the opposite of what you're thinking in that moment when you're giving into that thought.
Yeah, I would love to go through those. Let's start with the first one.
Yeah, and maybe before we do, I just want to say, like, I would love for everybody listening to like, what is your flavor of this sentence of the I'll start, blank? Like, is it I'll start Monday on the 1st with the new moon, with the new year, when life is easier, right? Like that's another one we hear a lot and I use a lot. It's just not the right time. Right? I'll start after my vacation. I'll start after this work project. I'll start after this particular life event. I just need to use up what's in my house just
Mhm.
one last time, right? Kathryn, do you have any others? I mean, these are the ones that I could come up with, but there's so many.
Oh, for sure. I mean, everything you said is so applicable. You think that there's going to be this state that everything in your life will be together and you'll be eating perfectly. That's another one. Oh, when I eat perfectly, then
Yes,
I
yes.
won't binge.
Right. Or when I'm a certain size, I'll just
Yes.
get to a certain size. I need to lose the weight first. That was mine, right?
Yeah.
That keeps us stuck in the cycle. So many. There are so many. So everybody listening, just think about like, how does this show up for you? So again, I think I alluded to this a little bit, but the first reason why this is completely false is because if you binge today, right? If you say, I'm going to binge today and then I'll start tomorrow. But if you binge today, first of all, you're ensuring that the urges are going to come back bigger and stronger. And the opposite is true, that if you don't binge today, the urges are going to get weaker, because we're either reinforcing or extinguishing our food patterns. There's no staying still. So starting tomorrow is not just as easy. Starting tomorrow is always harder. So that's the first one. And then the second one is we love to make these predictions about tomorrow or next month or the first, but you can't eat tomorrow. You can only eat now, right? When tomorrow comes, it's going to be now again. So it's like when we say, I'll start tomorrow, we're just, as you said earlier, it's just our brain finding a justification for making overeating possible now. Because the reality is the only time you can put food in your mouth is now.
Yeah, for sure. It's if we want to get into a deeper philosophical discussion, time is kind of arbitrary, right? Like
Totally.
we're always in the now. That was something I first learned from Jack Trimpey's Rational Recovery. He said something along the lines of, you want to commit to yourself that I never drink now, and it's always now. He even sold watches for a little while that every time on the watch said now, 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 now.
That's
It's so
amazing.
funny,
That's amazing. I
right?
actually love that. I love that. I mean, that's genius because, yeah, it's like life is an infinite string of nows. The only time you can manage your eating choices is now.
Yeah, and I think there is an illusion that it will be easier at a later time. And I think that's where that thought ultimately comes from, is the
Right.
next now will be easier for me to deal with, but the urges are going to be stronger. You're going
Yes.
to have to go through the discomfort at one time or another. And the approach we teach, is a simple one, but it's not always easy. And at some point you are going to have to go through that, as you say, the productive discomfort of change.
And again, we're already uncomfortable. So which discomfort do you choose? Do you choose the discomfort where on the other side is peace and freedom and it gets easier and easier and easier over time, or the discomfort of binging now, ensuring that it's going to get harder and harder and harder over time? Because either way, you're uncomfortable. But one of the discomforts is the one that gives you everything you want. Life is inherently uncomfortable. There are just moments of discomfort,
Yeah.
but it's so
And
empowering to know that you can choose your discomfort.
yeah, for sure. And the discomfort of getting through the urge is so much less than what you're dealing with now with your binging and the effect it's creating in your life and all the shame and the pain and the physical effects. I mean, getting through the urge, although not always comfortable, is so much less uncomfortable.
Yeah. And the other thing, it's simple. And yes, it's not easy. It doesn't seem to be easy in the moment, but which is harder? I say this all the time, but like nobody's ever binged and thought that was such a great idea. I'm so glad I did that. Versus allowing the urge, which is a little bit uncomfortable, but everyone is always so happy on the other side. Yeah.
Absolutely. And then you get to have tomorrow as a binge-free person. You get to have
That's
today as a
right.
binge-free person. You get to have next
That's
week as
right.
a binge-free person. That's amazing.
It is. It is. And it's so exciting, right? So, okay. And then the third thing is that one of the things I think that I'll start tomorrow line, that myth of the I'll start tomorrow, is somehow what I do right now won't really count because I'll make up for it tomorrow, right? Like implied in the I'll start tomorrow is I'll deal with this tomorrow. I'll figure this out tomorrow. I'll save myself from this somehow tomorrow. And the reality is every choice counts. We always get to choose, and we are always choosing the results of our choices. So we can decide to make a choice that reinforces the pattern of binging or that weakens it. You're either making a choice that loves you back or a choice that doesn't love you back. It's a choice that's a vote for future you, or it's keeping you stuck in what you don't want anymore.
Yeah. And it's interesting when you say that. That was probably my biggest thought of I'll make up for it tomorrow because I did
Mm-hmm.
the compulsive exercise for,
And me too, right there
yeah,
with you
for
on the
purging.
elliptical.
Yeah. So in the moment before a binge, I told myself the purging was going to fix it. But gosh, the next day when I woke up, I was so regretful of my choice. I wish for
Right.
anything that I had made a different choice because it was awful. The overexercise was awful and it didn't make up for anything. It was just an extra source of pain. It was an extra source of just physical torture on my body.
Totally. Physical torture on your body. And beyond that, I mean, as a person who also did hours and hours and hours of exercise to make up for my binges, right? To purge my binging. But the other piece of it also is that, you were younger when you recovered from this, but I was older. And what I noticed over time is that the other part of that myth is, right, like, it doesn't really matter. I can fix this tomorrow. But what I noticed over time is that it got harder and harder and harder on my body, on my system, and things that quote unquote worked in the past no longer worked because the body can only put up with so much. And binging is very, very hard on the system. And so it's not just starting tomorrow. It's really like long-term damage to the body. And again, this is not to say that people can't have beautiful full recoveries and the bodies are resilient. They're amazing. But what I'm saying is when you're trying to sell yourself that myth, oh, I'll just start tomorrow, I'll fix this tomorrow, it won't be a big deal. It's actually a very big deal. You're going to be hurting. You're going to be depressed. Your body's not going to feel well. You might feel compelled to do hours of exercise, which we are not suggesting anybody does. No, that is not the way to recover the next day at all. There's no punishment the next day. It is go right back to adequate eating. But the point is that over time, enough listening to I'll start tomorrow, you start to see that it's not tomorrow when my body's going to rebound. It takes a while for the body to start to feel normal again.
Yeah, it becomes harder and harder to recover from the binges. It becomes harder and harder to recover from the overexercise, the purging, and gosh, you're creating so many health risks that they just they add up over time.
That's right. Yeah. And then the fourth thing is when you allow yourself to fall for that myth of I'll start tomorrow, it's really cutting into the fact that your word to yourself is sacred, right? One of the biggest things for me about recovery is this notion of integrity. I do what I say. I keep the promises that I make to myself and thus to others, right? Because it's so tied in with self-mastery. And so as you commit to living binge-free, to eating adequately, to expecting and allowing urges, to really doing that process, which maybe at first feels challenging because it's unfamiliar, but is so much easier than binging, right? As you do that each time, you start to build up this connection with yourself like, oh, I do what I say. I keep these promises to myself. And then when you're doing it in one area, you start to see that you can do it in other areas. And on the converse side of that, obviously, giving into that, I'll start tomorrow. So you're out of integrity there. And then it bleeds into, at least for me, it bled into so many other areas. I wasn't showing up as the person I wanted to be at work, in my relationships, because I was so busy trying to fix the mess of the binge.
Yeah, and it can just eat away at your self-confidence when you continue to make promises to yourself that you don't keep. I remember just feeling like, wow, I'm so incapable of doing anything I tell myself I'm going to do. And that just really degrades like the way you feel about yourself and your integrity over time.
Yeah. Yeah. So, to everybody listening, make that choice today. I keep the promises I make to myself and others. My integrity is the foundation of this. Really like visualize the you who is in integrity in that way. Because again, imagine waking up tomorrow binge free and being like, oh, I can do that. Then I can do this. What else can I do?
Yeah, Julie, all these four reasons are so important. It really helps break it down for people. And I think, what we teach is when the urge comes, any thought, any feeling, any physical sensation that encourages you to binge is that urge, is that neurological junk, is what you want to dismiss or, as you say, expect and allow. So you don't want to give any of these binge encouraging thoughts any value or any attention. So this is one of those thoughts. So really, when you have this thought, it's really about just not giving it attention, not letting it mean anything to you. But in order to do that, sometimes it's super helpful to break it down and to understand it. And so that's what's been so helpful about you giving these four reasons of why it's a myth, because it really helps people understand this thought so that when it comes up, they can really internalize that this is not their true thought. This is just their primitive brain's neurological junk, and they can dismiss it and move on. So yeah, Julie, that's kind of the way I see it. How else do you teach people in the Brain Over Binge group and your one-on-one clients to really separate from this thought?
Yeah. So I think, first of all, it's about really everyone committing to recovery now. Everybody listening, just whatever you're doing now, right? Like right now is the perfect time to recover. There is no better time than now. So that's the first thing, like having that perspective, like I recover now. I always recover now. No matter what I ate a second ago, I am ready to recover right now. So that's the first thing. And then, of course, like I encourage everyone to get support, keep listening to these podcasts, join the group, get coaching, use Kathryn's audio course, read the book, listen to things. Bathe your brain in what you want for yourself. Watch the messaging that comes into your brain because you're giving your brain instructions with every input. And so you really want to get these messages over and over again so that it just becomes how you start to think, right? And then another thing is commit no matter what to eating adequately now and always, one meal at a time. Because without the adequate eating, the rest of this is useless. If you're trying to restrict and overexercise your way into recovery, it's never going to work. So it's really like I'm recovering now, and that starts with eating adequately now and always, one meal at a time.
That's such an important point. This actually leads me to think about something else related to this myth of I'll start tomorrow. I think a lot of times when this comes up, it's in reaction to someone that eats in a way that they think is imperfect. So if they eat something that they think, oh, it's unhealthy, I should not have eaten that, then they'll have the thought, oh, okay, we'll just binge now and start over tomorrow. And it just doesn't make any sense. And based on everything you've heard in this podcast episode, I think you understand that. But just, I want the listeners to be extra aware of this thought comes up a lot after imperfect eating. And that's why it's so important to accept imperfection, to realize that imperfection is so much better than a binge. And that thought that comes up that says you should just binge after imperfect eating, it really does not serve you at all.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. And I'll also add that like recognize the myth of perfect eating,
Yeah.
right? Like if we're talking about myths here, there's no such thing as a perfect meal. It doesn't exist. It never has. There isn't a perfect amount. There is only good enough, which is why we use that word adequate. So just commit to having good enough meals. And if you eat a little extra, or you eat an ingredient that you weren't expecting to eat, or it's something on a plan that you're on that doesn't fit, it doesn't matter. You just move on. Next meal. And you might feel a little uncomfortable. There might be a little brain noise there. And again, that is a perfect opportunity to heal that particular pattern of the myth of imperfection, which is tied, like you said, to the myth of I'll start tomorrow. Oh, I blew it, so I might as well keep going and then I'll be perfect tomorrow. No, because there is no perfection. So you'll never achieve that either.
Yeah, absolutely. And continuing to do your best in the day that you're in, or continuing to do your best now is the best way to keep yourself going. I posted about something similar to this on Instagram recently, and I posted a quote that said,
great quote.
Yeah, it said the best preparation for tomorrow is doing your best today. And this was by H. Jackson Brown Jr. And I just thought it was so important because, like, even if your eating doesn't feel great today or now, if you continue to do your best and not go off, into a binge, that's going to set you up to make eating improvements that you want to make, if there are any to make. But the improvements can only be made from a place of trying your best and not saying, oh, screw it, I'll just binge and then start over.
Totally, 1,000,000%. And to that end, I'm very big on mindfulness and mindful breathing and practicing a pause. And one of the things that I always say when I start off my calls as we're breathing is every breath is a chance to begin again. And so if there's anybody listening who just had a moment of quote unquote imperfect eating and you're tempted to say, I blew it, I might as well keep going, take a breath right now. And just remember, you can begin again now. Go on to your next adequate meal whenever that comes and just keep moving forward. That's it. And to that, I'll just add that along with adequate eating, right, the other piece of recovery is expecting and allowing urges or dismissing urges now and always, one moment, one urge at a time, right? So it's that twofold path of eating adequately and then managing the urges now, not tomorrow, now. This could be the hardest they ever will be, because the first time you expect and allow an urge, that's as hard as it ever has to be. And then it can get easier from there.
Yeah. And then you can get excited about all the benefits that you see of eating adequately, and dismissing urges, and your life just starts to open up. You'll see that there is no need to start over tomorrow anymore. You just keep doing your best in every moment.
That's right. We've already mastered the art of the start. All of us, right? It's time to just keep moving forward. And I love that you said, like, get excited about it, right? Like if you're in the group, post your celebrations to the forum. If you're not in a group, write down all of your non-weight benefits. What is better in your life immediately after that urge? Because the thing is, the more you savor and celebrate what you're gaining, is your mood better, your digestion, your integrity, your presence, what is better on the other side of that urge? The more you celebrate that, the more you're going to want to do it.
Yeah, for sure, because that just reinforces the new habit. And the last thing I want to say, and then I'll see if you have any final thoughts, is that if you do act on an urge, you're not starting over. I think that's another myth, is that if you act on an urge, your recovery goes back to square one. No, you're just continuing and improving, and you can just keep going.
That's right. I love it. I love ending with that point. Just keep moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And we believe in every single one of you listening to this podcast. If we can do it, we know that you can do it too.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Julie, for being here and talking about this myth of I'll start tomorrow.
Thank you, Kathryn.
Thank you so much for listening today. We hope that the next time you have the I'll start tomorrow thought, you'll be onto your brain and not let it lead you into harmful actions. We understand that the upcoming holidays may bring up some extra challenges for you. And if you want help navigating them and creating a successful plan for yourself, you can get one-on-one coaching from Coach Julie, or you can also book a session with me, as I've recently started doing one-on-one coaching again. I'm loving helping people in this way because there's so much transformation that can happen in just a 45-minute session targeted to your specific challenges. Coach Julie and I have opened up many new one-on-one coaching spots, including during this upcoming week of Thanksgiving and through the holiday season, for anyone who wants the direct support during this time. You can learn more and book your session at brainoverbinge.com/1, that's the word one, -on-1-coaching. And that link is in the show description. And there is always the option of being a part of the amazing Brain Over Binge group led by Coach Julie if you're someone who wants daily support and coaching and a community of people all encouraging one another and learning from each other. You can join the group at brainoverbinge.com/group. Thank you again for listening today. I look forward to talking to you again next time. And until then, I want to encourage you and remind you that you have the power to change your brain and live a binge-free life. The Brain Over Binge podcast is produced and recorded by Brain Over Binge Recovery Coaching, LLC. All work is copyrighted by Brain Over Binge Recovery Coaching, LLC, and all rights are reserved. As a disclaimer, the host of the Brain Over Binge podcast are not professional counselors or licensed healthcare providers, and this podcast is not a substitute for medical advice or any form of professional therapy. Eating disorders can have serious health consequences, and you are strongly advised to seek medical attention for matters relating to your health. Please get help when you need it, and good luck on your journey. Need more help? You can find all of our current and upcoming options for support at brainoverbinge.com.